Starting to clean. Finding the current location. Going to clean in a zigzag pattern first. Then, clean along the wall and around outside.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 44. Today we're going to look at another device for automating the cleaning of your home.
Okay, so Alexa now cleans?
Well, kind of. So there is Alexa integration, but what we're going to take a look at today is the Samsung JetBot AI robot vacuum.
Seriously? We're going to review a robot vacuum again? Haven't you had like 16 robot vacuums at this point?
Come on, Keith. Haven't I told you like a million times not to exaggerate?
Yeah, there really is some irony there. So let's just say we're going to review another Samsung robot vacuum. And question jumps to mind, why do we really need to be reviewing another robot vacuum now? What makes this one different?
Okay, considering my history with robot vacuums, I probably deserve that a little bit. Now, a little bit of my defense, I bought two of the same robot vacuums because one of them died and I needed to get a replacement. And so how this came about is my current robot vacuum, the refurbished one that I had a warranty on, that had been sent in for service once before, had to go in for service again. And this is where supply chain probably got us in the backsides a bit. So they are waiting for a part. I don't know if this part's ever going to come in or not, but they're waiting for a part to repair that vacuum. In the meantime, Samsung sent out a pre-order offer, special deal on their new JetBot AI robot vacuum. And it had some interesting features, some things that, I said, you know what, this would be kind of cool, and we don't have our robot vacuum now, so let's take a shot. So the big thing, along with some of the other controls and functionality about it, is this particular one ships with a tower that is the docking station for charging, but also it empties the dust collection chamber of the unit. So what it basically gives us is more automation.
Okay, cool, yeah. Sounds like things aren't equal between the old and the new models. That's pretty cool. And it sounds like the main difference is, I guess to summarize, is that in addition to just charging the robot vacuum, your base station has this capability to empty the dustbin for you, or at least allow you to not have to do it yourself as often. Is that basically correct?
You're spot on, Keith. So I can tell you that the technology with this unit is also far, far more sophisticated. I had an idea of that from the information they provided in the pre-order, flyers and all that good stuff. But once I got the unit, started using it, setting it up, all of those things, I will tell you I was completely blown away about how much technology there is in this system.
Really? Blown away? I don't hear you use that term very often or very lightly, I guess, when it comes to technology. So what is it about this that blows you away?
So let's start at the beginning. After you unbox and set it up, one of your first steps is you need to create a floor plan of your home. And so once you get into the SmartThings app and you tell it to go out for the first time, it's actually going to use the onboard LiDAR to create that map of your home. Now, that map is extremely accurate. As a matter of fact, I can put up a floor plan of our house that was drawn and the house was built from, and you can compare it, we'll do an overlay with the LiDAR map that was created by the robot. And it is scary how accurate that is. If you contrast that to the old vacuum's very rudimentary map, it basically threw square rooms in for everything. So if it went into a room and it said there was a room there, it basically threw a different size square or rectangle in there, but it really did not match a floor plan type layout. And then on top of that, you can go into the map, you can interact with it, which you could not do in the old software. You can interact with that map and draw areas on it to exclude. You can also give it custom names, and it'll also map out things like chairs and tables and other obstacles in the environment that it should avoid on a regular basis. So that is really the things that blew me away in its functionality. How's that for a start, Keith?
Oh, no, that's great. You had me at LiDAR, frankly. So you know what I'm going to ask next, don't you?
Oh, I don't know that you want to do a tech deep dive on how LiDAR works?
Bruce, you complete me. So that is exactly correct. I would love to do a deep dive on that. So?
What the heck? I mean, this is technology that is super, super cool, and quite honestly, it'd be a great thing for our viewers to get more information on, because honestly, there are so many devices that are currently using LiDAR, and in the future, far, far more devices are going to be using this really flexible and powerful technology.
Awesome. So let's step into my office. All right, let's take a deep dive on LiDAR. Now, I live in Detroit. I work in the automotive industry, so shouldn't be a big surprise that I'm going to take an automotive spin onto this topic. So LiDAR, what is it? It's pretty interesting. You know, they play a pivotal role as a core technology in what, autonomous vehicle development, or the inclusion within these ADAS systems, or advanced driving assistance systems. So what is a LiDAR actually doing? It's pretty cool. It's actually emitting a pulse of light, not in the visible spectrum, thank goodness, but that pulse of light will go out into the world, and it will bounce off of something, it will reflect, and it will return. And this LiDAR equipment is able to really precisely measure the amount of time. That's really what it's doing. How long, in seconds or milliseconds or microseconds, how long does it take for that pulse of light to return? And because the speed of light is fixed, it's constant, then it can directly relate that to the distance. So that's really all it's doing. That's the R, by the way, in LiDAR. It's the ranging. So it's that's what it's doing. But it's doing it like it's spinning around and shooting out millions of these pulses of light all over the place, like 1 million times a second. So it's not just a single measurement, it's tons of measurements that are happening. And it's able to generate what's known as a point cloud. If you choose to visualize that data as an image, you get these cool images that they look like pointillism is the art genre, I believe, right? They look very cool. Just Google LiDAR point cloud and you'll see all kinds of these kinds of images. Now, if you go to a company like Velodyne in the supply chain, Velodyne is kind of like the OG in this space. So they evangelize LiDAR technology quite a bit, and they will really lean into the fact that their data stream that they're collecting is inherently three-dimensional, as opposed to a camera image, for example, that is inherently two-dimensional, right? So that's kind of what LiDAR is and what it's doing. But how does it actually work? Well, it doesn't, having a good sensor that's collecting point clouds isn't enough, right? So what is it actually doing? So I like to describe this system in terms of a verbal paradigm of sense, think, and act, right? And it doesn't really matter if you're talking about robot vacuums or cars. This is kind of a generic way to describe it. It's more or less accurate. So what is sense? So sense, LiDAR is a sensor, as well as cameras and GPS and radars and vehicle sensors that are tracking vehicle speed and for example, brake pressure. All of these things are sensor data that's being collected and fed into an algorithm that lives as software on a compute box, if you will. And so the control algorithm is the think. So we've done the sense, and what is the thinking that's happening? So I'll describe it a little bit in terms of an image, even though there's lots of different kinds of sensor data. So what it would do is it would say, okay, this chunk of pixels in this image is a thing. And this other chunk of pixels in a different part of the image is some other thing. It's a different thing. So you could call that partitioning, for example. It's going to partition the data out. And then it needs to go a step beyond and do a kind of a classification. So in other words, it's not just enough to say that this chunk of pixels is a thing. You then have to decide, okay, that thing is actually another car. And this chunk of pixels is a lane marker, and this chunk of pixels is a road sign or a stop sign, and that kind of thing. And it's pretty sophisticated in the sense that it has to do this so many times per second, and it has to do, it has to keep a buffer of past time steps. In other words, for the classification even to work, you could imagine that a child running across the road might, in some cases, look kind of like a plastic bag blowing across the road in the wind. But the way that it moves might be part of what is necessary to help classify it correctly. But even more importantly, I would say, is that getting an accurate time history is good for prediction, right? And as you know, Wayne Gretzky would famously say, "I'm not skating to where I think the puck is. I'm skating to where the puck will be." And so getting an accurate time history, it's very challenging to do that, by the way, to stitch all of this sensor data together, because each of these sensors is a hardware device that has its own latency and its own lag. And sometimes that lag changes while you're driving, right? So it has to be stitched together. It has to be put into a buffer so that accurate classification and prediction can happen. So a lot of thinking going on. So sense, we covered think. Now there's the act. And what's the act? Well, it's the actuation or the actuators. So in the case of a vehicle, the steering wheel has to be actuated, it has to be turned. The brakes have to be applied or modulated, or a command signal is sent to the eDrive unit, for example, to accelerate, things like that. So that's really what's going on, and it has to happen so fast and in real time. So now I'm going to introduce what is probably maybe the most provocative topic, I would say, right now in autonomous vehicle development. And it's an engineering challenge, or it's a discussion that hasn't been resolved yet. And I'm going to let my friend Elon Musk introduce it. This is a clip from a TED Talk at the Gigafactory in Texas. This is Chris Anderson interviewing Elon Musk.
Because you said, like, what are the road networks designed to work with? They're designed to work with a biological neural net, our brains, and with vision, our eyes. And so in order to make it work with computers, you basically need to solve real-world AI and vision. Because we need cameras and silicon neural nets in order to have self-driving work for a system that was designed for eyes and biological neural nets. I guess when you put it that way, it's sort of like quite obvious that the only way to solve full self-driving is to solve real-world AI and sophisticated vision.
Well, that's interesting that it's the only way. I'll touch on that in a second. But let's first step back in terms of what the design principle is, or the philosophy behind the Tesla Autopilot system. So what he's describing here is what's known as biomimicry, or evolutionary design. And the idea is pretty simple. It's, hey, we're a product manufacturing company. We're solving a problem. Our product is solving a problem. So let's look into nature and or into the real world, if you will, and see, has that same problem been solved by some biological animal or a biological system, or just something in the real world has already come up with the solution to this same problem. And maybe it's not exactly the same problem. Sometimes you need to reframe the problem statement a little bit to find something similar, but that's the idea. And then the idea is, hey, let's copy that, right? So all of this adaptation and evolutionary optimization has happened in the real world. Let's just copy it. And we're going to design our product to solve that problem as similarly as possible as the real world did it. That's the idea. It is totally legitimate. It is like I would even go further to say it's a good way. It is a good way to think about designing a product. Now, is it the only way to solve a problem? Is it the only way? No, it is not the only way. It's a good way, but it's not the only way. But Elon is claiming it is. And that's more provocative than you would realize. So I'm going to play a second clip. This is the Lex Friedman podcast, just a little piece of like an hour-long episode. But let me play this. He goes into a slightly deeper dive on this topic.
I mean, what it comes down to at the end of the day is, to solve self-driving, you have to solve, you basically need to recreate what humans do to drive, which is humans drive with optical sensors, eyes, and biological neural nets. And so in order to that's how the entire road system is designed to work with basically passive optical and neural nets, biologically. And now that we need to, so for full self-driving to work, we have to recreate that in digital form. So we have to, that means cameras with advanced neural nets in silicon form, and then it will obviously solve for full self-driving. That's the only way. I don't think there's any other way.
He said it again. He said it again, that it's the only way. That's so provocative, you have no idea. So it's not maybe obvious, but what he's actually saying when he says that is that LiDAR sucks. That's what he's saying. You know, because the last I checked, human beings, we don't have freaking laser beams on our heads doing ranging. We're not building 3D vector space in our minds. No, we're not doing that. I mean, bats and dolphins, I think they're using sonar, and sonar actually is kind of like LiDAR. But you know, regardless, we don't have laser beams, and he's saying that LiDAR sucks. He's on the record that it's the only way. By the way, I love the confidence and the consistency, right? As a leadership style, employees of Tesla are seeing Elon Musk out there on multiple different platforms, as well as probably internally, saying something that relates to the vision and guidance and direction of the company that is very consistent. And it's very clear. He's not equivocating either, right? So he's saying that LiDAR sucks. I can tell you for a fact that the rest of the world doesn't believe this, right? So there is many companies out there, Waymo, for example, yeah, they're using LiDAR. Lots of companies are all in on LiDAR as part of the measurement chain used for their ADAS systems that they're developing. But, you know, Elon is not equivocating here. He's not being subtle that cameras and neural nets are the only way. So if he is right, what does that mean? So we'll talk about that in a minute. So the idea is he's thinking about this as a system and that it has to be efficient, right? The same reason that humans have evolved due to our limited mental capacity and memory capacity. What he's really saying is he doesn't want his Tesla vehicles to have hundreds of pounds of hard drives and compute power resources being lugged around on these vehicles. So that's the name of the game, and actually has always been the name of the game for quite a long time in vehicle engineering, is efficiency. So that I'm totally buying. I don't think that's an argument for why LiDAR can't be part of the solution, but I do buy that argument in that sense. They're looking at the whole thing end to end to get the most efficient and most performant self-driving system as possible. But again, I'll just close by saying he's saying it's the only way, right? He is saying that. And it will not take long for that statement to be either true or false. I will say 5 years. Now, I'm saying 5 years is not a long time, but it may take about 5 years. And if he is right, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that other companies who want to survive are going to stop what they're doing with the LiDAR stuff, and they're going to go this way. They're going to start copying him. Or it will mean they will, make some kind of partnership or some kind of licensing deal where they take Tesla, chips and hardware and neural nets and they put them on their vehicles. That's what that will mean. If he's not correct that it's the only way, then you will see other players in this space also be successful, right? And so it's almost like a BETAMAX versus VHS moment that is happening, right? If Elon is correct, then he is VHS, and everything else, including LiDAR-based stuff, is BETAMAX. And if he's not correct, then you will see both VHS and BETAMAX out in the real world. Now, for robot vacuums, the problem is a little bit less challenging, and I'm willing to believe that LiDAR is the best technology, actually, for robot vacuums, and is probably already dominating in this space, even though we're only in the third or fourth inning, and that decision really hasn't been made in the automotive segment yet.
Keith, I think I speak for everyone here.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I think it had really been way too long since I had had my last Geek Out session, so really appreciated that. Thanks, I really needed that.
So now that we have a better understanding of LiDAR, you know what else we're going to discuss?
Oh, I don't know. Imagine, if you will, a YouTube channel giving away 10 free t-shirts, much like this one.
These t-shirts would be soft, almost luxurious, with a Dad's Talk Tech logo.
The channel's only requirement to win would be being a subscriber living in the US or Canada.
The channel would determine the winners of these t-shirts 30 days after reaching the milestone of 1,000 subscribers.
Imagine a world where you are one of those 10 subscribers wearing this free t-shirt.
Now imagine returning to the video you were originally watching.
The advanced sensors and identification or classification capabilities of the robot?
Been looking ahead in the script again, haven't you?
Why, yes. Yes, I have.
So let me show you how smart this robot vacuum is. As it's vacuuming your rooms, it actually is using the cameras and sensors to identify potential objects as obstacles. It then takes those objects it's identified and classifies or identifies them as things like belts, cords, socks, for example. So to be honest with you, especially sharing this on YouTube, I was a little worried about that functionality.
Yeah, I suppose it could be a little embarrassing if someone left some underwear out around the house and then we ended up talking about it here on the channel.
Exactly. So I love being able to go back and look at the vacuum report history and see how good a job we did on our SAM readiness preparation. SAM readiness is our process for going out there and picking up all the things in the various rooms that would potentially cause problems for our Samsung robot while it was vacuuming.
Okay, yeah, that does seem smart. So let me get this straight. There's a cleaning report that's generated each and every time there's a cleaning session that happens?
Yes, I'm actually going to bring one of those reports up here for everyone to see. So after it's done vacuuming, it creates a report and it gives you information like the total square area that it vacuumed, the amount of time it took, and all the obstacles that it encountered during the vacuuming session, and it identifies what those objects are. As well, from the floor plan, you can see each and every path that the vacuum took while it was completing its tasks. It's pretty amazing.
Wow. I mean, that's like nirvana if you like data. This is a geek's nirvana.
And you can even turn on the onboard camera and view it while you've got the app open. So as the vacuum is proceeding around the house, completing its chores, you can actually see what it's doing. And this has got a couple of uses that you can put it to. One, just see where the vacuum is and what it's, where it's at in that cleaning process. Let's say that you're away. But you also can use it as surveillance. As a matter of fact, they call it the surveillance mode in the app.
That's impressive. Yeah, I mean, I could even see using that for a debugging or a troubleshooting type of event where if, I don't know that your vacuum has ever had trouble, but if it did get caught up on something, you could definitely take advantage of the onboard camera to diagnose the mystery as to what went on, I suppose. Yeah, I don't remember your old robot vacuum doing anything remotely close to any of this.
Well, Keith, that's because it didn't. I have to say that the refinement from the 9300 series, which is the robot vacuum that we had before from Samsung, to this new JetBot AI is nothing short of remarkable. It is really a huge leap forward. Samsung really upped their game with this latest iteration of robot vacuum.
All right, cool. So we don't want technology just for technology's sake, right? So I have to ask the obvious question. How does it clean?
I would say it does a good job. Honestly, I think the 9300 may have done a slightly better job vacuuming, but I always kept that in the highest suction mode versus with this solution, it has an auto sensing one or an auto mode. And when it detects that it needs to increase the suction because of the debris that it's picking up, it'll actually do so and then go back to a more moderate level of suction. That helps with battery life and making sure that it's really using that that suction power when it needs to, and when it doesn't need to, again, extending that battery power. Perhaps if I left it, forced it into the highest suction mode like I did the 9300, it might be closer to parity, but I'm really trying to be a little bit smarter about how we use this robot versus the past ones.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. So, follow-up question here. Are you using this as your primary vacuum then now?
We aren't. So we're using this to augment our cleaning plan. So basically, we run the robot vacuum on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that is our weekly, touch-up, if you will. Then on the weekends, we're using our Dyson vacuum to do a deep cleaning. So I think this is maybe a little bit smarter strategy with the unit. In the days that we had the 9300 series, we actually did let that go out every single weekday and then vacuumed on the weekend with a Dyson still. So again, just trying to cut down on some of the wear and tear on the vacuum and using it maybe a little bit less during the week to extend its life. Now, I don't know if it'll have the same longevity problems that the 9300 did, but some of that might have been, a problem of our own making, right? Making that vacuum run every single day. And based on the size of our house and the problems it had navigating, because it did not have the advanced sensing capabilities that this vacuum does, it tended to get stuck a lot. I'd have to, go up and address it because I could hear it, chirping for help, and I'd go fix it. And of course, depending on when I heard that or if I was on calls, I couldn't necessarily go up there and fix it. So, the battery, it would make multiple trips out to get the whole house done. This vacuum does a trip or two. The 9300, I want to say it would sometimes have as many as 4 trips in order to have enough battery power to do it. That killed both the battery and I think a lot of those moving parts as well.
Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. I know from visiting that Storm, and Storm, by the way, is Bruce's dog. I don't know that Nessa, we haven't referenced Storm much on this channel before, but Storm is Bruce's dog, and he's a German Shepherd, and I can tell you, you don't even have to pet him. You just get close, and hair will just magically get right on you. It's impressive. Nessa's a little bit like that too. So I don't think that's anything against Storm per se. I think it's a German Shepherd thing.
Yes, Storm always seems to be shedding, and no amount of brushing ever seems to make the problem go away. And we've had multiple German Shepherds over the years, and it is definitely a German Shepherd thing.
Yeah. So I think you did an unboxing as well, isn't that the case?
I did, and maybe for the sake of time, we'll take that unboxing and some of the app walkthrough and some of the video of it, doing the work around the house and then returning to base and what that whole thing looks and sounds like, because I think, it's good to hear the unit running, both while it's vacuuming as well as while it's emptying the collection bin. Just edit that down a little bit so that we can, fit into a smaller footprint.
Sounds good. Learning and saving time.
So let's go ahead and take this top cover piece off. So we've got some various documents that are here, including the book, the quick start guide, and warranty information, all that good stuff. So I'm going to put that information aside. So you can see, if you go back to our old reviews, and I'll maybe put kind of the old design up on the screen later in post, but it's got a different design. Obviously, color is different. There were multiple colors available, kind of black and copper, and that motif. This one has got more of a white. One of the things that you'll see prominently here is it mentions, this might be too shiny to see, but this has LiDAR. So it can use that for mapping the room as well as obstacle avoidance in conjunction with the obstacle avoidance cameras and sensors that it has built in. Let's flip this over, and so it's got a different design on the vacuum head, and this is interesting. It's got kind of a felty feel here along with the scrubby bars, so this is a dramatically different type of brush. It's not just the traditional vacuum brushes that I normally see and that we have on the other units. So should be interesting to see how all of this works together. But again, it's got a camera up front. I would say it's close to the same height as the old unit, and it's got the wheels. These are really, I think, smaller wheels, but the same kind of suspension system that the other one had to give it the ability to go over multiple different types of terrain. And then it has a trailing wheel, and then of course the charging element. So let's go ahead and put this aside and dig into the rest of the package. Now, one thing that this solution, and we'll see if I really like that or not, the way this solution works is it does utilize a collection bag. So this is something that you're potentially going to have to buy on a periodic basis. I'm not sure if this is single use or if we can reuse it, so we'll kind of figure that out when we get more into the rest of the review and I've had a chance to actually test this unit, because this literally is the first that I'm opening this up and taking a look at everything. From past experience, I know this is boundary magnetic tape, so you put this down and you mark out the areas you don't want the vacuum to be able to go to, not even try, and have to work around obstacles, so you can mark out areas as quote out of bounds. Here is the power cable for the dock, and this appears to be perhaps like a HEPA filter. So here is the docking station. It is a large unit, so that's one thing that if you go to get one of these, that you're going to want to keep in mind, that this unit is quite large. So this has a bigger footprint, I think, overall than the older units. Although I think because the vacuum cleaner, to me, looks like it sits, a little bit further up onto this. I'm not sure that it sticks out a whole lot further. I can actually measure that for when we do some of the testing, and I'll be able to tell you, how that compares. But from a height perspective, if you don't have a lot of height available where you're planning on putting this, and you should put this docking station into an area that is a hard surface, so wood floor, tile floor, something like that. Preferably not carpet has been the past recommendations I've seen on that. This appears to be the door for emptying the device, but I won't swear to that at this point. But that kind of has that look to it. So that would line up with this element right here. That looks to be the same shape, so we'll see if that's actually in fact how it empties the device, but it appears to be how it would do so. It's got a push button, so this is where we would do that. So it does appear to come with more than one of these replacement bags or containers. So I've got one that has shipped in the unit, and I have one that is separate. So not sure how often these will need to be replaced, but it is something to keep in mind that it is going to be an ongoing service item. That is not something that the old unit had as part of the equation. It had a plastic container. You emptied the container, you'd rinse it out. It did have a filter, but that filter was reusable. All you had to do was wash that, and you could reuse. So that gives you an idea of all the components of what this device looks like. The vacuum cleaner, you don't have to do this, but it would ride up, dock itself, and charge. So this is how the unit will sit in there. And we'll get some more footage of how this looks when it actually runs, and its functionality compared to the older unit that we don't actually have right now, because it got sent off to be repaired again. That's probably the biggest knock on that old design, was we had multiple things going wrong with it. So we had 2 repairs that we had completed on that unit, and that's actually our second unit. I had a warranty on that second unit, and so it's being repaired under warranty, but I think because of the global supply chain parts issue, we do not have that unit back yet. They did notify us a long time ago that they had to order parts. Have not heard anything since, so I'm probably going to have to try and check up on that, see where that device is. But in the meantime, we have gotten the next gen unit. So the unboxing is done. I'm going to show you some of the SmartThings app usage and going through some of that information for you. Make it as fast as possible. I think you'll be impressed with some of the things you can do in here. I know I really love what you can do with that. As an aside, if you've got other Samsung appliances that have the Wi-Fi capability, they actually are going to show up in your SmartThings application as well. So you can actually get some interaction. As a matter of fact, our refrigerator, which has an integrated screen, gets the updates about the progress of how the vacuum is doing. So the refrigerator kind of keeps tabs on the vacuum to make sure it's doing its job.
All right, well, color me impressed. I must say, your first robot vacuum seems downright primitive in comparison, and I don't think I was ever really that much interested in that vacuum myself, other than I agree, it did seem to do a really good job of actually vacuuming. This one's a bit different. You provoked me.
I kind of sense that, Keith. And with your wood floors and the change in design of the brush, I think that might, be something that, has a real payoff for you. So I'm going to put the brush designs side by side so we can take a look at those.
Yeah, interesting. That new design is not what I was expecting at all. I must say it almost looks like a mopping brush versus, I don't know, a traditional vacuum brush.
That's funny because I thought the exact same thing. For a minute I thought I had the wrong brush, like there was supposed to be a different brush that I put in there for vacuuming, and somehow this had some mopping function, but it doesn't.
Huh, yeah. Interesting. So I know this video is getting a bit on the long side though, so I believe this has been very thorough and interesting. How about you share your likes and dislikes?
Good idea. So I can tell you, I like almost everything about this vacuum. I think the path that it takes to actually do the vacuuming is a little crazy sometimes, but I'm sure there's some, algorithm someplace deep embedded in its logic that says this is the best way to do it. So at the end of the day, as long as it gets its job done, I don't care that much. So the robot vacuum does occasionally get stuck on my daughter Addie's piano seat leg. I don't know why, but if I push it in just a little bit closer to the piano, it doesn't seem to have that problem. Now it does sit pretty deep into the pile of our carpet, so that's the one thing in the house and the only place it's ever gotten stuck. I don't know why, but that particular piece of furniture is problematic for it. Now the old vacuum, I got signaled pretty regularly that it had sucked something into the device that needed to be removed, got stuck on things. That was a really, really common occurrence. I've never actually had to go and remove anything from the brush path on this vacuum. So to its credit, when it sees something on the floor that it needs to avoid and not try and vacuum up, it avoids it. The old vacuum was kind of a bull in a china shop, and it rolled over everything and sucked it in regardless of whether it was good for it or not. And that may have actually been one of the things that has caused it to not last as long as well. Battery life may be an area where it could maybe do a little bit better, but this is really hard to gauge. I mean, it's doing a lot of work. It can do the 1,400 square feet of our main house, right? Sans the obstacles it's working around. So it's obviously not 1,400 square feet that it has to vacuum. It can do that in a battery charge to a battery charge and a half, right? So it'll go and dock after the second trip with not a battery that needs to be recharged. It's 50% or whatever. So it is decent, but part of me would love to see this be able to do the entire first level of our house on a single battery charge. Doesn't seem to be able to do that. At the end of the day, I guess I don't care too much. It does, and this is probably a credit to the job it's doing and to the fact that we have a dog that gives off hair like crazy. It will, sometimes return to base just to empty and then go right back out. So, the bad days, it's picking up a lot of debris, probably a Thursday versus a Tuesday, since Tuesday is only a couple days after we vacuumed with the Dyson over the weekend. Depending on where you put the base or the tower for this unit, you may want to put it someplace where it's a little bit out of the way if you can, but they do recommend you put it on a hard surface. The reason I say this is when the unit returns home to dock and charge, when it does that, it's always going to empty the canister. And if it has a separate trip to empty the canister alone, that process of removing the debris from the robot is loud. It's basically another vacuum in that tower that's sucking all that debris out, which I don't mind so much. I mean, it's doing a good job of cleaning it out, but it's loud. Fortunately, it only lasts a few seconds to get that emptied, and then you're good to go. So just keep that in mind, that you might not want to be having a conversation or be on the phone right next to this when it decides to return to base. From an information perspective, like the reports and while it's vacuuming, like if it returns home to charge, you can actually see all the places it's been, the entire path. So it's building that path out. It's not just the final report. You can see that. So you know exactly where it's going to go out and vacuum when it's done, and where it's been, and the exact path it took to get there. That is great. There's a ton of hardware improvements. The sensors on it are better. The fact that it's got an onboard camera, you can view that remotely. Those are all great things. But I will tell you, probably the software is the even bigger improvement they've made, which is hard to believe, all the hardware changes they've made and how much improvement there is there. The software, your interaction with it, what you can tell it to do, you can tell it to go spot clean something, you can draw an area on the map and say avoid this area, you can send it out to vacuum a portion of your house. So if one room you were doing craft day or something and there's sparkles everywhere or something like that, not that would ever happen in a house full of 4 daughters, sparkles being used, but if you've got that situation, you have the freedom and flexibility to do that. You don't have to run a full cycle. You can tell it to go vacuum something. You can also say, look, we've got this project laid out and a bunch of puzzle pieces on the floor. Don't vacuum this area. So you can just highlight that on the map, say don't vacuum this. Until you remove that, it's going to continue to avoid it. So just a ton of improvements over the old vacuum. One feature or situation about this vacuum that probably does not thrill me a lot, and it wasn't really super clear from the pre-order information, and I still would have continued on with the order, but the dust collection chamber for the tower, it actually uses, and this is going to seem old school, right? It uses an old-fashioned fabric collection bag. Now it is a double layer bag, so there's some filtering capability so that the air that it's sucking through is not going to get blown out and you're got dirty air that's being created by this process. The problem is this: depending on how much you send this vacuum out, how much debris there is in your house, and if you have a dog like me, that vacuum bag is a consumable. And since I did the unboxing, I do have a lot more information about what that looks like. So today, those bags are very, very difficult to track down. Right now, only Samsung has those bags in stock. I ordered some. They're pretty expensive, right? So it's $40 to buy 5 bags. And again, depending on how often you're vacuuming, the amount of debris that's in the house, those types of things, your mileage about how long those 5 bags are going to last is going to vary. I've been cheating. I've just been pulling some of the debris out of one of those bags, saving one of the bags for an emergency until my restock supply comes in.
Wow, that was a lot to soak in. Wow. And I think we probably have enough at this point to get to the very important and critical part of the episode, which is the stamp of approval status. I think I know where this is going to go, but Bruce, why don't you go ahead and make this official?
Keith, I think your instincts are normally pretty good, but I think it might surprise you a little bit when I say this definitely gets our Dad's Talk Tech seal of approval.
Oh man, I thought you were going to give it the not approved status. Our viewers who watch all of our episodes, they know it's not easy. It is not easy to get the approved status. I really thought you were going to not approve it. But, you were pulling a fast one on us, weren't you?
Like I said, your instincts are usually pretty good.
My instincts are telling me that we've reached the end of the episode, and it's time, frankly, to say you're still watching. You're still watching. Unlike Nessa, your eyes are open and you're watching this, so you may as well go ahead and, wow, she is really out. You should give this video a like.
And since you're giving it a like, you should go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already done so. You literally have nothing to lose doing so. And since you're subscribing, you should go ahead and click that bell so you get notified of new episodes.
And lastly, my instincts tell me it's time to let you know that you will see Keith and Bruce and Nessa next time on an episode of Dad's Talk Tech.